man to the council hut. Every man. Now, the king has called. Every man to the council hut. Every man. Now, the king has called.
What has happened? Tell us.
Go inside. Pray. The men will handle it.
They always say that.
The king summoned every man in Adoba within the hour. They poured into the council hut at the center of the village. The long, low building with the entrance cloth across its doorway and the smell of years of decisions made in its interior. Women had never entered this hut. Women were not expected to want to. An elder paused at the entrance of the council hut and turned back to the women who had gathered in the compound, his voice carrying the formal weight of someone speaking for the village.
This is not your matter,
he said.
Go to your homes.
His eyes moving across them.
Keep the children calm. Light your fires and pray to the ancestors. Leave the rest to us.
The entrance cloth fell back into place behind him. The women looked at each other across the compound. Not one of them moved toward home. They stood in the open air for a long moment, looking at the council hut, looking at each other. They had just been told that something which would decide whether they lived or died was not their concern. Amora did not go home. She went to the side of the council hut, where the mud wall had dried and cracked over the years along one seam. A crack through which sound travelled freely. She pressed herself flat against the outer wall. She listened.
We charge at dawn. Every man. Full force.
We hit them before they have finished assembling, and we do not stop. And if they are already assembled, 3 villages charged at them. 3 villages burned. Those villages did not have our numbers. Our men are ready. Our ancestors are watching. Those villages said the same thing.
For 2 hours she listened to men who were afraid doing what frightened men often do, making as much noise as possible to fill the space where certainty should have been. Voices climbed over each other. Then the king's voice, tight with impatience and fear, he was working to keep out of his voice.
Enough!
The king cut in sharply.
Someone give me a plan that works. Not a plan that sounds like courage. A plan that actually works.
Silence on the other side of the wall. Then more argument. Nobody in that hut mentioned the weakness at the center of Cavara's most feared strength. Nobody could mention it. Only one person in Adobe knew about it, and she had not been invited inside. She rose from her crouch beside the cracked wall. She walked around to the entrance of the council hut. Her body had made the decision, and she followed it the way a person follows something that has already begun to move. She pushed through the entrance cloth and stood in the doorway. The silence was total. Every head in the council hut turned toward the doorway at the same moment. The king's face registered surprise before settling back into authority. Jaro's eyes went narrow and hard, and Deron, who had been sitting close enough to the entrance to see her the moment she appeared, rose from his seat.
What is this?
The king said quietly, the voice of a man who could not believe what he was seeing.
My king, I have information about Cavara that nobody in this hut has. I am asking for 1 minute.
Amora said from the doorway, her voice steady.
Remove her! Remove her!
Jaro said, his voice cold, his hand lifting toward Deron.
Their formation depends entirely on their legs. If their legs fail them before the charge begins, the whole army collapses. I know how to reach their legs before a single spear is raised. 1 minute. That is all I am asking.
Darren walked toward her. He moved without hurrying, the way a man moves when he needs every person in the room to see that he is in control. He reached her. He placed both hands on her shoulders. He did not need to push hard. The direction of the pressure was enough.
Do not do this. Not here. Not now.
She stumbled across the threshold. One knee went down into the red dust outside the council hut. Her hands came forward. She caught herself on her palms. The entrance cloth fell back into place behind her. Through it came the laughter. Full and genuine, from many throats at once. The released laughter of frightened men finding something lighter to feel than their own fear. A woman appearing at the entrance of the council hut. A woman pushed back outside. These things were funny.
Send her back to her cooking fire where she belongs. A woman who wants to fight our wars for us. What will they think of next?
Nearby, a young man had stopped walking. Kodan was the king's younger brother, 23 years old. He had been walking through the compound on his way to join the council when he arrived just in time to see Amora come down on one knee in the red dust. He stood still. He watched her hands find her wrapper. He watched her straighten it with a steadiness that was not the absence of feeling, but the complete and practiced mastery of it. He stood in the compound for longer than he meant to. Something about that steadiness reached into a part of him he had not known was reachable. He went inside and joined the council and sat down and voted with the others for Jaro's plan. But he could not fully settle for the rest of that evening. Five years before this story began, the king of Adoba had made peace with Cavara. The negotiations had happened over several days under a tree between the two villages, a neutral meeting place. Representatives from both sides had eaten together and drunk palm wine together and spoken words of alliance. They had reached an agreement. The agreement was this. A woman named Abena, who was 23 years old and had grown up in Adoba with her whole life rooted in it, was included in the terms of the peace as a gesture of goodwill. Her family was there. Her friendships were there. Her sense of the world was built on that specific red earth between those specific two hills. Nobody asked her. Nobody sat with Abena and said, "We are considering including you in an arrangement between our village and Cavara, and we would like to know your thoughts." The men who negotiated the peace discussed many things across those days under the neutral tree. Land, trading rights, mutual protection. At some point, one of them raised the idea of a living symbol of goodwill. A woman from Adoba who would go to Cavara and live there as evidence of the seriousness of the arrangement. The men on both sides agreed it was a sensible gesture. Abena's name was among the names considered. Her name was the one selected. Then someone went and told her she was not consulted. Her feelings about it were not a factor in any part of the negotiation. She was told what had been decided. She packed what she owned. She left Adoba and went to live inside the village that would one day become its enemy. The men who had arranged her departure celebrated the wisdom of their diplomacy. Amora had known Abena since they were young women going to the same river. She had watched her leave. She had sat with the knowledge of what the arrangement had actually cost a specific woman, and had said nothing about it. because there was nowhere in Adobe to say it that would have produced any result, except more of the same silence. But she had not forgotten Abena. Not in a single season of the 5 years that had passed since that morning. In the weeks before the war message arrived, before she could fully explain even to herself why she was doing it, Amora had begun sending messages. She began tucking folded leaves inside wraps of dried fish sent through market women who travelled between villages every trading week. These women moved between villages with goods the way water moves through channels. Freely, consistently, beneath the attention of every gatekeeper and guard and man of authority. Women carrying goods between markets were as unremarkable as weather. They had always been. And the men who benefited from their movement had never once thought to examine what else might be moving with them. The messages were written in a private language Amora and Abena had built together when they were young women. Knot patterns on the wrapping cloth. Specific leaf combinations. Marks that looked like accident or decoration to any eye that did not know what it was reading. The morning after the council hut, before the sun came up, a market woman stopped at Amora's compound gate. She set down a wrap of dried fish on the low stool outside the door, said it was payment for an old debt, and continued on her way without slowing. Amora unwrapped it, with hands she kept steady through sheer force of will. Inside the dried fish, a folded leaf. She opened it slowly by the light of her cooking fire while the village slept dark around her. Abena was alive. This was the first and most necessary thing. 5 years inside a strange village, and she was alive. Abena had been watching. 5 years of invisibility, and she had used every minute of it to watch. She knew the warrior count of the Cavara army. She knew the route they planned to use to approach Adobe. She knew the night they had chosen for the attack. A new moon night picked specifically for the darkness it would provide. She knew the location of the communal water source the entire army drew from every morning before training and before every battle, and she was ready to act. Amora read the message once silently.
I am alive. I have been watching. The attack comes on the new moon. They will move through the eastern valley. Their water comes from the northern spring before every battle. Their general will drink from no other source. Their opening charge is everything. If their legs fail them, the fight is already over before it begins. Tell me what you need. I am here.
Amora folded the leaf carefully. She held it pressed against her chest with her eyes closed. She thought about Abena. 5 years of watching and enduring and maintaining the invisible threads of communication on the chance that this moment would come. 5 years of using the only tool she had ever been given. She put the leaf inside her wrapper close to her skin. She turned back to her cooking fire and began the day. She chose midday at the river for the first meeting because midday was the one window when the bank was reliably empty of everyone. The morning crowd was gone, and men of Adobe did not go to the river at any hour because fetching water had never been something their legs were called upon to do. She sent word to the women she had in mind through channels so ordinary they were invisible. A whispered sentence at the grinding stone, a specific arrangement of objects left on a doorstep that meant something only to the woman it was meant for. On the appointed midday, she walked to the river with an empty pot on her head. and Adina was already there at the water's edge, her cloth spread in front of her in the posture of a woman doing laundry. Over the next hour, 7 more women arrived separately, with enough time between each arrival that no pattern was visible to any eye watching from a distance. One came to draw water, one came to rinse a wrapper, one came carrying a clay pot that did not need filling. They arranged themselves at the riverbank in the casual way of women going about ordinary tasks. Nobody watching from the village would have seen anything worth watching, because nobody in Adobe ever watched where women went in the middle of the day. When they were all there, Amora looked at each of them in turn. Then she spoke, without ceremony.
The village is going to fall. Not because our men are cowards, because they are planning the wrong fight, and they will not hear it from us. So we are going to fight the right fight ourselves, in the dark, where nobody is watching.
She paused, her eyes moving from face to face.
And if we do it correctly, the men will charge at dawn and think they won, and the village will still be standing, and we will know what we did. That is all. We do not need anyone else to know.
She told them what she knew about Cavara, the battle formations her mother's stories had given her, the superstitions of the fighters, the weakness sitting at the center of their most feared strength. She told them about Abena, the 5 years, the arrangement that had sent her there without her consent, the folded leaf in the dried fish, what it had cost to send. She read the message to them quietly while the river moved past with its usual indifference. The silence when she finished had several different things inside it. Fear was the most visible, sitting in the set of certain shoulders and the stillness of certain hands. Disbelief was the next thing, the instinctive response of people being told something that exceeded what they had been trained to believe was possible for them. Zara spoke first, 20 years old, newly married, with her wrapper pulled tight around herself, in the manner of someone using cloth as armor against things cloth could not stop. Her voice was almost too small to hear.
And if they find out, what happens to us when they find out? Zara, what is happening to us right now while we sit by this river? What happens to every woman in this village when it falls? That is what we are already facing. We have nothing to lose that we were not already going to lose.
Nobody answered. The river went past them with its own indifferent agenda. Adina was staring at the water with her jaw working silently, rehearsing an objection, abandoning it, picking it up again. 20 years of disappearance had become her entire shape, and what Amora was asking was not just dangerous, it was an undoing of the only self she still recognized. Adina folded her cloth. She stood. She walked back toward the village without confirming or refusing anything, without looking at Amora as she left. 3 women exchanged a glance over her departure. Amora watched her go and did not count her as lost. The women who remained leaned in over the sound of the river and began to plan. In the days that followed, the men of Adobe made a great deal of noise. Training exercises ran every morning at the open ground behind the Iroko tree. Men running and shouting and practicing the formations Yarrow had designed for the dawn charge. Spears being sharpened on smooth river stones. The war general standing with his arms crossed over his broad chest, calling out instructions, his voice carrying across the whole village. The king held council every second day. The atmosphere of the village shifted into a particular register of anxiety. The anxiety of people who were substituting movement for strategy and hoping bravery alone would be enough. The women cooked their meals and served them kneeling and cleared everything after, and were asked nothing. In this noise, covered and hidden inside this noise, the women worked. The messages between Amora and Abena through the market women became more frequent and more specific. Through Abena, they confirmed the exact night of the planned attack. They confirmed the Eastern Valley approach route the warriors would use, moving entirely on foot, as was the Cavara way. They confirmed the location of the communal water source at the northern edge of the Cavara training ground. They confirmed that the Cavara war general was deeply superstitious about his source water and would accept no substitute on the morning before any engagement. And they learned in precise detail the nature of Cavara's most feared weapon, a full-force coordinated sprint formation. Every warrior in the army moving together on foot at maximum combined speed in a tight formation that hit a defensive line like a single enormous force rather than a collection of individual men. 3 villagers had seen the charge coming and had not been able to form a line solid enough or fast enough to resist it. This was what was going to be used against Adobe. This was what had to be broken before a single Adobe spear was raised. Amora distributed the roles to each woman in the circle with the precision of someone who had been thinking about this problem from every angle for a very long time without knowing what the problem was going to be. Sela prepared the root mixture. Amora brought her to the kitchen one evening when the light had gone soft and the cooking fires of the compound had begun to glow at the edges of the doorways. She set out the dried roots her mother had once taught her to identify, the bitter roots that grew in the shaded places near the river.
This will not kill. It will hollow. It will drain the legs of the strength they need to hold the sprint formation over fighting distance. Warriors who depend on their legs for the single most important thing their army knows how to do will find, on the morning of the attack, that their legs have been quietly taken from them. It is one of their own remedies. Their bodies will know the taste. They will not reject it.
The mixture travelled in a sealed clay pot of groundnut paste, tucked inside a market woman's regular trading bundle on the normal weekly route. Three days before the planned attack night, Abena's careful, unhurried hands introduced it into the Cavara communal water source. The same source the entire army had already been drinking from for days. The same source the superstitious war general would insist on for his fighters the morning of the engagement. Meanwhile, the men of Adobe held their daily training sessions and finalized the dawn charge with great energy and complete confidence.
Drive forward! Keep the rhythm strong! Adobe! Adobe! We strike as one!
Amora left the plan exactly as it was. She needed the men to charge at dawn. She needed the enemy to see warriors coming loudly from one direction, while everything that actually mattered had already happened from directions nobody had thought to watch. One evening during this period, Bakono passed by the cooking area on his way back from training. His footsteps heavy with the particular tiredness of a man who had been practicing war movements in the afternoon sun. He passed Sela without stopping or turning to look at her. She had just finished her third load from the farm in the failing light. Her wrapper was streaked with red dust. Her shoulders were rounded forward.
When you are done with all of that, come and rub my feet.
My legs are tired from the training today.
Selah set her load down. She looked at her own hands for a moment, palms up in her lap, fingers spread. Then she picked the load back up and carried it inside without a single word. The women nearby who heard this said nothing and looked at nothing. On a Wednesday evening, Amora was banking her cooking fire for the night when she heard the knock at her door. She opened the door. Adina was standing outside in the dark. She did not need to hear a word. Adina's face said everything that words would only have slowed down. Then she pulled Adina inside and closed the door. What came out of Adina was not organized. It came in pieces.
I cannot do this anymore, Amora. My husband has been watching me. 3 evenings now.
She pressed the heel of her hand against her forehead and squeezed her eyes shut.
He asked me 3 times what is wrong, and I could not give him an answer he believed. He knows something. He is going to find out.
She lowered her hand. Her face in the lamplight was older than it had been a week before.
I have made my decision. I am going to tell him tonight. I am going to tell him everything.
Her eyes filled.
Anything is better than this weight I am carrying through every hour.
She did not speak right away. She sat down across from Adina on the kitchen floor, her wrapper settling around her crossed legs, and she was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was the quietest thing in the room.
Adina, I need you to listen to me. Before you go anywhere tonight, I need you to listen. The year before last, do you remember the 6 huts on the eastern side that burned? I went to the elders at the Iroko tree the week before that fire. I had seen something at the river that I knew meant raiders. 2 men I did not know moving the way scouts move. I told the elders. They listened to 2 sentences. And they sent me home.
She paused. The fire ticked softly behind them.
3 days later, the huts burned. 6 of them. The whole eastern side of the village had to be rebuilt from the ground up. Nobody connected my warning to what happened. Nobody came to my door. Nobody said my name. I sat in this kitchen that night until the fire went cold around me. I made a decision that night, Adina. Not from anger, not for revenge, simply because I refused to stop being awake in my own life when every single thing around me wanted me to go to sleep.
Adina lifted her face slowly. Her eyes were wet. Amora continued, her hand reaching across the small space between them and resting lightly on the older woman's wrist.
I am afraid, Amora. I am so afraid. I know. I am not asking you to be brave. I know what it costs you to be here. I am not asking you to be unafraid. I am asking you to remember that you have already survived things that should have broken you. You are still here. That is the strongest thing I have ever watched any person do in my life. And I am asking you to do one more hard thing with what is left of that strength.
Adina wept, not delicately, fully, the way women weep when there is no longer any reason to manage how they appear. Amora moved to her side and held her in the dark kitchen, while the village went on around them with its ordinary nighttime sounds. They sat together for a long time after the weeping slowed, neither of them speaking. Three nights later, Kodan could not sleep. The restlessness that had been building in him since the moment he had watched Amora rise from the red dust outside the council hut would not release. He turned on his sleeping mat. He turned again. The night air pressed against his chest like something with weight. At the 3rd hour past midnight, he gave up. He stood. He walked out of his hut. He followed the sound of faint voices past the cooking area and through a grove of neem trees at the edge of the compound. In a small clearing lit by a low fire, 12 women crouched in a tight circle over a detailed map scratched into the dirt. Pathways, positions, approach routes, symbols marking specific locations, not the marks of women who did not know what they were doing. Kodan watched from the shadow of the neem trees. He watched for a long time. He understood more clearly with each passing minute until what he was looking at was no longer confusing at all. He walked back to his sleeping mat. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling of his hut, the weight of what he now knew pressing on his chest like a stone, and 23 years of certainty quietly rearranging themselves beneath him into a completely different shape.
If you are eager to know how this story unfolds, drop continue in the comments.